Ready to swap out those spreadsheets for a discus and maybe a toga? Today we're diving deep into the ancient Olympics.
Sounds fun. But we're not here to do just a regular sports history lesson, are we?
Definitely not. This deep dive is about uncovering the unexpected lessons hidden within those ancient games. Principles you can actually apply to your business and your life today. Ready to go for the gold.
Let's do it.
All right, so when most people think of the Olympics, they think of, I don't know, athletic feats, competition, winning medals. But our sources describe the original Olympic Games as something much deeper, almost like a giant act of worship.
It's true, the ancient Greeks saw it as much more than just a competition. Imagine, for them, every foot race, every wrestling match, it was all happening under the watchful eye of Zeus, the king of the gods.
Okay, so talk about pressure. You've got the eyes of the stadium on you, but then like actual gods watching your every move.
Hmm.
So how did that belief that the gods were actually watching them affect how the athletes competed?
Well, winning wasn't just about personal glory. It was seen as a sign of divine favor, proof that you were, living in alignment with the gods' values.
So it completely changes the game, right? It's not just about being the fastest or the strongest, but about embodying something bigger than yourself.
Exactly. And that's where this idea of arete comes in.
All right, hey.
It's this ancient Greek word that's often translated as excellence, but it's so much more than that. It's about striving for your fullest potential, not just physically, but morally and mentally.
So it's like, yeah, you could be a champion athlete, but if you're a jerk to everyone you meet and your moral compass is a little off, not very all right?
Exactly. It was about aligning your actions with your values, striving for excellence in all aspects of life.
Which, let's be honest, is something we could all use a little more of today.
All right, so we've got these athletes striving for art radi, competing under the watchful eyes of the gods. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Olympic truce.
Ah, yes, the Ekakeria. Can you imagine? For months leading up to the games and during the games, all warfare between the city-states was supposed to stop completely.
It's a pretty mind-blowing concept when you think about it. These were city-states that were constantly at each other's throats, and yet every 4 years, they would put aside their differences and come together to celebrate these games.
I mean, that's like the United Nations, but
Wow.
with more wrestling and a lot fewer strongly worded letters, right? So how did this truce actually work? Did everyone just magically get along?
Well, our sources describe instances of broken truces. There was always political maneuvering and even attempts to use the games for strategic advantage. Wasn't perfect, that's for sure.
So it's not like everyone suddenly transformed into these perfect, peace-loving citizens.
Exactly. But even with those imperfections, the very fact that they strived for this level of peace, that they understood the power of putting aside their differences, even temporarily, it's pretty remarkable, don't you think?
Absolutely. Kind of makes you wonder what they would think of how we handle competition and conflict today.
Right. It's a powerful reminder that even in the most competitive arenas of life, there's always room for collaboration and finding common ground. Just like those ancient athletes, we can strive to be our best while also respecting the humanity of those around us, even our rivals.
Speaking of those athletes, let's dive into the actual events. We've got sources describing everything from wrestling and boxing to chariot races. These weren't just games, they were high-stakes competitions.
Oh, absolutely. And what's fascinating is that these weren't just tests of brute strength, although strength was definitely important.
Yeah, you don't want to be going up against a weakling in a wrestling match, right? But you're saying there was more to it than that.
Way more. Take the pentathlon, for example. This event required athletes to compete in 5 different disciplines: running, jumping, discus, javelin, and wrestling.
Talk about a full-body workout. So it wasn't enough to just be really good at one thing.
Exactly. You had to be versatile, adaptable.
It's like they were saying, okay, you can run like the wind, but can you also hurl a javelin across the stadium and then win a wrestling match? Show us what you've got. And I'm guessing those ancient athletes didn't just roll out of bed and win Olympic events, right?
Mhm.
What did their training actually look like?
Let me tell you, it was no walk in the park. We're talking years, sometimes even decades of intense physical training.
Wow. So this wasn't just a hobby for them, it was a lifestyle.
Oh, absolutely. And it required incredible discipline, strict diets, rigorous training schedules, and the mental fortitude to push past pain and exhaustion. Remember, they didn't have fancy gyms or personal trainers back then.
Not to mention, I bet they didn't have protein shakes and energy bars either, right?
Right. They were relying on sheer willpower and a deep-seated belief that what they were doing mattered.
And this wasn't even a guarantee of victory. Can you imagine dedicating your life to something, knowing that only a select few would achieve that ultimate prize, that olive wreath? That's a whole other level of commitment.
It really is. And it speaks volumes about their mindset, their understanding that the journey itself, the pursuit of excellence, was just as important as the destination. It's a level of dedication and commitment you just don't see very often today. It's humbling, really. These athletes weren't chasing sponsorships or fame. They were driven by something much deeper.
It's true. They didn't have Instagram back then to show off their training regimen.
Right. Their motivation was rooted in this pursuit of RFE8, this idea that it wasn't just about winning, but about embodying excellence in every single step of the journey. And speaking of RFE8, there's another fascinating aspect of the ancient games that we need to talk about: honor and fair play.
Right, because what good is winning if you're not playing by the rules?
Exactly. In fact, before they could even step foot in the arena, every single athlete had to swear an oath to Zeus.
Wait, so like a solemn vow in front of everybody. What did they actually swear to?
They promised to compete honorably and to uphold the sacred spirit of the games. And let me tell you, cheating was taken very, very seriously.
Yeah, I bet the stakes were a little higher than just getting disqualified.
You're telling me? We're talking punishments like public shaming, steep fines, even having statues erected to, well, immortalize their disgrace. Can you imagine? Forever remembered as a cheater, talk about a blow to your legacy.
Wow, a permanent record in stone. I'd say that's a pretty strong incentive to play by the rules. It's interesting, though, because in today's world, it often feels like there's this, I don't know, this pressure to win at any cost, right? Like, cut corners, bend the rules as long as you come out on top.
And it's a slippery slope, for sure. But the ancient Olympics offer a powerful counterpoint to that mindset. They remind us that true success, the kind of success that stands the test of time, is built on a foundation of integrity.
So it's like they were playing a much longer game. It wasn't just about winning that one chariot race. It was about building a reputation, a legacy on principles of honesty, fairness, sportsmanship. Those things mattered.
Precisely. And honestly, isn't that the kind of success we all ultimately want? The kind we can be proud of, the kind that inspires others. And this applies to so much more than just sports. It's relevant to how we build businesses, how we lead teams, how we interact with our families and communities.
It's about being able to look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and know that, win or lose, you stayed true to your values.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about these high ideals, the deeper meaning of the games. But I have to ask, what about the athletes who didn't win? What happened to them? Did they just pack up their sandals and head home in shame?
Not at all. Remember, simply competing in the Olympics was considered an incredible honor.
It's like they say, it's an honor just to be nominated.
Exactly. Think about it. These athletes had dedicated years of their lives to training, to pushing their physical and mental limits, just to earn a spot at the games.
So in a way, just being there meant they had already achieved something extraordinary. Absolutely. And they were surrounded by the best athletes from all across the Greek world. Can you imagine the energy, the excitement, the sheer inspiration of that experience? It was a chance to test their skills, to learn from the very best, to return home with newfound knowledge and a fire in their belly.
So even if they didn't get to stand on that podium, they walked away with something incredibly valuable.
Without a doubt. And I think there's a powerful lesson in that for us today. We live in a culture that often fixates on winning, on being the best, on constantly comparing ourselves to others.
And let's be honest, that can be exhausting.
It really can be. But the ancient Olympics remind us that the journey itself, the struggle, the perseverance, the dedication to something bigger than ourselves, that's where the real growth happens, the real transformation.
It's about embracing the process, the ups and downs, the wins and the not wins, because it's all part of the journey. And speaking of journeys, our sources describe the Olympic Games as this incredible spectacle, this massive cultural gathering that drew people from all corners of the ancient world.
Oh, it was a sight to behold. Imagine thousands upon thousands of people converging on Olympia, traveling by foot, by donkey, by ship, all to witness these games. It wasn't just about the athletic competition, it was a celebration of Greek culture, a chance for people from all walks of life to come together.
It must have been like a giant festival with, more athletic feats and fewer funnel cakes.
Something like that. But it's important to remember that this wasn't a world known for its tolerance or diversity.
Right. These city-states were often at odds with each other, each with their own customs, beliefs, even their own dialects. It wasn't exactly one big, happy family.
Exactly. And yet, for those few weeks during the Olympic Games, they put aside those differences in the spirit of competition and celebration. They were united by something larger than themselves, something that transcended their individual city-states.
It's incredible, really, that they were able to create that kind of shared experience.
It's remarkable. And it makes you wonder what those ancient Greeks would think of our world today. A world where, thanks to technology, we're more interconnected than ever before. A world where collaboration can happen across continents, where ideas can spread like wildfire.
It's almost like they laid the groundwork for the globalized, interconnected world we live in today. A world where, despite our differences, we can still come together, share experiences, and work towards common goals.
And that's precisely why we're taking this deep dive. It's not just about looking back at some ancient sporting event. It's about unearthing the timeless wisdom embedded in those games and seeing how it applies to our lives today.
Right, because even though we're not ancient Greeks competing for glory and olive wreaths, these lessons about competition, collaboration, perseverance, integrity, they're just as relevant in the 21st century as they were thousands of years ago.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So how do we take these ancient principles and actually put them into practice in our modern lives? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do we actually take these ancient ideals and make them relevant to our modern lives? We can't exactly swap our laptops for shields and go searching for an olive wreath, right?
Right, although that would make for an interesting team-building exercise.
Mm.
But you're right, we need something a little more, well, a little more applicable to the 21st century. So how do we do it? How do we channel our inner Olympian in the real world?
Well, I think it starts with a shift in mindset. Imagine you're facing a challenge. It could be anything. A big presentation at work, a creative project you're stuck on, even just trying to reach a personal goal that feels really daunting. Now imagine how an ancient Olympian might approach that same challenge.
Okay, so instead of picturing myself hunched over my laptop, stressed out about deadlines, I should be envisioning myself, what, running a marathon? Throwing a javelin?
Well, not exactly, although a little exercise never hurt anyone. The point is, they wouldn't just focus on the end goal, on that external marker of success. They'd also focus on embodying Audubon throughout the entire process.
So it's like saying, okay, I want to get this promotion, I want to hit this deadline, but I'm not going to compromise my values or burn myself out in the process.
Exactly. It's about defining success on your own terms in a way that aligns with your values and allows you to maintain your integrity every step of the way.
Which, let's be honest, is easier said than done, right? The pressure's on, the deadline's looming, and suddenly that shortcut starts to look really, really tempting. So how do we stay true to those ideals when it really counts? When we're feeling stressed, exhausted, tempted to just take the easy way out?
That's where the ancient concept of dedication comes in. Remember, those Olympic athletes trained for years, often with no guarantee of victory. They understood that true achievement, true excellence required discipline, perseverance, and a willingness to keep going even when it was hard, even when they didn't feel like it.
And let's be real, they didn't have smartphones and social media to distract them. It makes you realize how much our constant need for instant gratification, for those quick hits of dopamine, might actually be working against us, especially when it comes to achieving those long-term goals.
It's true. We've become so accustomed to instant results that we often forget the power of slow, steady, dedicated effort.
It's like we're all sprinting when sometimes what we really need to do is pace ourselves for a marathon.
Exactly. And remember, those ancient athletes, they didn't do it alone. They had coaches, mentors, teammates, a whole support system to help them stay motivated, to push them further, to remind them of their goals.
So it's like building your own personal team you. Finding those people who will support you, challenge you, hold you accountable, people who will remind you why you started in the first place when you're feeling tempted to give up.
Exactly. And when those inevitable setbacks come, because let's face it, they're going to come, remember the resilience of those ancient Olympians. They faced injuries, they experienced defeat, they had moments of self-doubt, just like we do, but they didn't let those setbacks define them. They used them as opportunities to learn, to grow, to come back stronger.
It's that whole idea of falling down 7 times and getting up 8. It's about embracing those challenges as part of the journey, knowing that they're ultimately what make us stronger, more resilient, more capable.
And don't forget about the importance of versatility. Remember the pentathlon? How those athletes had to master 5 different disciplines. They were constantly pushing themselves to expand their skill set, to become more well-rounded. And that's a valuable lesson for us today.
So it's not about being a jack of all trades, master of none.
Not at all. It's about recognizing that the more skills you have, the more adaptable you are, the better equipped you'll be to navigate the inevitable twists and turns of life. Because let's be honest, life rarely goes according to plan, right?
Never a truer word spoken.
Exactly. And I think that brings us back to the heart of what these ancient games can teach us. It's about embracing the journey, about striving for excellence in all aspects of our lives, about approaching every challenge with integrity, resilience, and a deep sense of purpose.
It's about remembering that we're all part of something much larger than ourselves, and that even though we may be separated by thousands of years, we share that same human desire to push our limits, to achieve our full potential, to leave the world a little bit better than we found it.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Mm.
The spirit of the Olympics, it's not just about athletic competition. It's about the potential that lies within each of us to be our best selves, to strive for something bigger than ourselves, to make a difference in the world.
And on that inspiring note, it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. But before we go, we want to leave you with a little something to ponder. As you go about your week, think about what Amesate looks like in your own life. What challenges are you facing, and how can you approach them with the same spirit of dedication, resilience, and integrity as those ancient athletes? What legacy do you want to leave behind?
Beautiful. So until next time, remember the spirit of the games lives on in each of us. Go forth, embrace your own personal marathon, and strive for your own definition of Arisates.
Thanks for joining us on this epic journey back in time. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep that Olympic spirit alive.